Vincent, a quick word first about business in the current year. 2.2 million passengers in May alone, the busiest May in 75-year history of the airport. Tell us about that and where are they all coming from?
Well, we're in the good situation that we're seeing growth across all sectors of our market this year. We had very strong growth in 2014, 8% growth at the airport, but traffic is up 15% year to date, which is really fantastic growth. As I said, it's across all sectors, inbound and outbound, transatlantic, Europe, UK, all sectors performing very well. And of course the transfer business that we've been focusing on in recent years is doing very well as well.
Sure, and we'll probably come back to that a little later on. But anyway, let's move on now to the recent economic impact study that you had carried out on Dublin Airport. Almost 16,000 jobs in the airport alone. Now that will surprise a lot of people. Tell us about that impact study.
Yeah, we carried it out because I think everybody knows that Dublin Airport is an important vehicle, it's an important asset to the country, but putting numbers on the impact was important to us. And we surveyed all of the employer organisations around the airport, so we were able to identify direct employment in and around the airport of around 16,000. DAA, our own organisation, employs just over 2,000 at the airport, so out of that number we're still a relatively small proportion.
Sure.
Airlines, hotels, ground handlers, maintenance companies, there's a huge gamut of industries that are directly employing people at the airport, and the impact of that is very substantial in the local economy.
Sure, and 16,000, I mean, it's a good sized town in itself, you could say. But additionally, of course, when you take into account indirect, induced and catalytic impact, the jobs supported by Dublin Airport activity grows to even more impressive numbers.
Yes, nearly 100,000 by the time you add all of that together. The indirect impacts are the people that supply those industries, so again, relatively easy to identify suppliers to the direct industries here. Induced is the spending of all those industries in their own environment, and obviously then beyond that, what would be referred to as wider economic benefits. Tourism is probably the most obvious one, people staying in hotels around the country, but also the ability to do business, the ability to grow businesses in Ireland, whether they're export businesses or whether they're foreign direct investment. All of that is really enabled by the airport. And essentially the combination of all of that adds to about 4% of GDP in the country. So it's a very impressive contribution.
Absolutely. And I never thought I'd be asking you this question, Vincent, but given the tremendous growth that you're enjoying, not just this year, but the last couple of years, and the new potential that is now being presented, or will be presented hopefully by the IAG Aer Lingus tie-up, capacity must be starting to become an issue again at Dublin Airport in relation to runways and terminal adequacy. Can you cope, and what are the development plans you see as being necessary in the short term to cope with that expected growth?
Yeah, well, it's our job to cope with growth. We're certainly going to have a very, very busy summer, and the staff here at Dublin Airport and all of the other parties are very much focused on making sure that that runs very smoothly. The terminal capacity is broadly adequate, but having brought on Terminal 2, there are still pinch points in the morning. I think people will find when they're going through security queues or check-in in the morning, it can be a bit tight, but the terminal capacity is broadly there. The immediate requirement is for more stands for aircraft. We have about 85 aircraft parked here overnight, or counting the early morning arrivals. So when you consider that we have to have somewhere for each of those to take off first thing in the morning, that creates a big demand for space. And of course, looking into the longer term, probably the most important long-term development will be the development of a second parallel runway.
Sure. And what are we talking about here? 4, 5, 6 years?
Yeah, you're talking a number of years out for planning and construction. But I think we still have an environment here in Ireland where hopefully we can progress these things in a normal time frame. Look to our colleagues in the UK, where 20 plus years can go by and they're still talking about the concept.
That's right, and of course the consequent problems that has presented to them by not dealing with it in a prompt fashion.
Problems for the UK, and I hope opportunities for ourselves, and that's one of the reasons I think why IAG were so strongly interested in Aer Lingus, that they can see the opportunity to develop particularly westbound transatlantic traffic through Dublin. and
you
avoiding congestion in the
you obviously welcome that development as opportunistic for Dublin and Ireland, indeed.
Very much so. I think we still wait to see the next
Final
phase of the
bits,
transaction, and it's by no means done yet. But the very fact that Dublin Airport, the capacity that we have here and the opportunity that we have here was signalled as one of the strong reasons for the acquisition. That obviously was music to our ears.
Sure, great. And finally, Vincent, the impact study also claims that 1,000 new jobs are created for every additional million passengers that pass through Dublin Airport. So how many new jobs will you be creating this year? And given the very strong first half of the year that you're enjoying, will you get back close to your record numbers of 2007 in the current year?
Well, I think we're actually on track to beat those numbers in this current year. And we had 21.7 million passengers last year in 2014. We'd expect to see that beaten by a good 2 million plus passengers this year. Clearly, we're just about to start into the busy summer season, so it's all to play for yet. But if the current trends go, we'll see at least by those reckoning another 2,000 jobs impact on the economy from another 2 million passengers at Dublin.
Well, that's fantastic, and it's a great news story. And despite all the naysayers who said T2 wasn't necessary or was too big or whatever, I think the next time we talk, Vincent, we'll maybe be talking about it being too small. But it's a great story and well done.
Yeah, and like any infrastructure business, we have to take the long-term view.
Absolutely.
We have to look 50 years out, and we don't have the ability to deploy assets very quickly here. So that's our role.
One of the great strengths, of course, is you have the space to do it out here. A tremendous site, Dublin Airport, much bigger than I think most people realise.
Yeah, and it's as big, if not bigger, than most airport campuses. And the fact that over a long period of time the planning has been there, so there's been very little housing built in flight paths. All of that, I think, helps to promote the case for further development.
Sure. Thank you, Vincent. Best of luck for the remainder of the summer.
Thanks, Eamon.